Welcome everyone. Thanks for making time to join us for this informative webinar about the latest version of SimaPro and Ecoinvent. Before we start, I just wanted to let you know that the session is being recorded already, and the recording will be made available on the SimaPro Help Center in a couple of days. So the SimaPro Help Center is available at support.simapro.com. So feel free to watch the recording once it's done. Throughout the session, feel free to send your questions via the chat box or the questions box. I'm not sure what you see exactly, but either of them is fine. And we will try to address them immediately if they're relevant to what the speaker is talking about, or I will save some of the questions till the end, at the Q&A. So a little background about Prey Sustainability, the developers of SimaPro. We started in 1990, so really last century. And since then, our goal has been to empower LCA practitioners, sustainability experts, and business managers to get the facts right. And in our ecosystem of business and research partners, we really aim to connect the dots and collaborate with others to keep developing our products and improving ourselves and our products every day. So some of the stats that we're proud of is our large community of users. So I'm sure a lot of you users attending today, so thank you for your support throughout the years. But also our SimaPro partners that represent us globally. So we sell SimaPro partners and support them in over 80 countries worldwide. So we're very proud of that. And joining us to cover the Ecoinvent part is Emilia Moreno-Ruiz, Deputy Director at Ecoinvent. Hi, Emilia, and thanks for joining us again. We were just saying it's more of a tradition now, so it's always a pleasure to have you on board.
Hi, Ruba. Thank you.
And so Emilia leads the technical team and is in charge of the maintenance, the update, the development of the Ecoinvent database, and she is also part of the management of the Ecoinvent Association. And joining me also from the Prey side to cover the changes in SimaPro is my colleague Michiel Oehler. Hi, Michiel.
Hi, Ruba, and hi, Emilia.
So Michiel has been at Prey for over 25 years, and he's the SimaPro product specialist. He plays a pivotal role not only in the product development of SimaPro, but also in providing technical support to our users. So we've probably been in touch with either Michiel or me or Michiel throughout the years. Michiel is also part of the database team at Prey, which is responsible for implementation and update of data libraries and impact assessment methods. And finally, I'm Ruba, the Senior Customer Service Specialist at Prey, and I will be facilitating this session. So thank you all for joining us. So I think we can all agree that 2020 was a challenging year for many of us. It's still adjusting. I think the last time we had a webinar with the Ecoinvent was with the release of SimaPro 9.1 last year, where we had Ecoinvent Phase 6. Since then, we've also released SimaPro 9.1.1, but we didn't have a dedicated webinar for it because it was a less big update. But we were happy to at least service the customers and bring them new and updated data, also like Agribalis, the Qantas World Food LCA database, update of the EF, and we've also been working hard on improving and developing the SimaPro online platform. So in this webinar, we're happy to let you know that we will start deploying SimaPro 9.2 very soon. We are kind of now in the last stages of testing and final checks. So in this session, we really hope to capture the main changes. There is a lot of information, so we try to just give you the highlights in terms of what's new in the software, data, and impact assessment methods, some things to look out for when you're doing the update, and maybe give you a sneak peek on what you can expect this year and a little bit more beyond. So we scheduled the session a little bit longer than the usual. We have 90 minutes instead of the usual 60. just to allow for your user questions. So please keep them coming. We've noticed in the past we always run out of time. And yeah, so I think that's it. Please keep the questions coming. We will have a poll for you also to engage the audience in a few slides. So it would be great always to hear back from you. And now I will hand it over to Michiel.
Yes, thank you, Ruba, for this introduction. Yeah, my task is to talk a little bit about changes in the software and the database that you are using. And then I'll hand it over to Emilia, and she will, of course, explain the Ecoinvent in more detail. So there's quite a bit. To start with, the release date of the software, even though it's being released this month, we will set at March 1. This is actually to compensate you for the delays in the release of this version. We had a couple of setbacks, technical setbacks, personal setbacks, you name it. We are working on that. And yeah, we hope to get this version out for you soon. This software release date means that anyone who has a service contract that expired after March 1 can still install the SimaPro 9.2 with Ecoinvent 3.71. That's to start with. Some changes in the software. It's actually mostly an accumulation of smaller fixes of bugs and small improvements in the functionalities. Some of our users have been asking for the ILCD mapping to be improved to accommodate the EF2 and EF3 nomenclature. EF means environmental footprints. It's a system developed by the European Commission. And it originally was introduced in SimaPro 8.1 to map the substance names to the ILCD nomenclature list, but that has become obsolete, and now people are asking for the EF2 and even EF3 nomenclature. And it will be available for export and power user packages plus the SimaPro PhD. It's the mapping itself has not changed in the sense that the methodology or the steps you have to go through. That's actually quite a, let's say, complex number of steps, because SimaPro has a number of fields which are not compatible with ILCD. ILCD demands a number of fields which are not available in SimaPro. So for that reason, we have extensive guidance. Even then, using this function with the EF mapping does not mean that the files exported will automatically be EF compliant. So there will still be some manual work to be done. And that's also mentioned in this guidance. So that's very important for you to know if you work on projects that need to be delivering EF compliant materials. Now actually we're going to the first poll, and that is a question about Report Maker. Report Maker is an add-on feature which is available for free. It works with Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. And the idea is that you can copy a sort of calculation setup from SimaPro to your Word and Excel. And each time there is a major update or smaller update of your data in SimaPro, you can easily update your tables and graphs in Word or Excel, so you don't have to manually copy and paste all those in your reports. Yeah, Ruba, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'll give a few minutes for the audience to fill in their answers, but it's already a little worrying. We have over 90% who do not use it and don't really, or are all saying, I don't use it. What is Report Maker? Okay. So maybe in this time, I'll just give them a few minutes, a few seconds more to answer.
Okay. Well.
Okay. Okay. I think we've reached around 80% of the votes.
No.
So I will close the poll and we can share the answers.
Well.
I think you can see the answers. So again, 91% don't use it. What is Report Maker? So I think that's a good opportunity maybe to recap what Michiel just said. So Report Maker is an add-on piece of software that you install on your machine. So let's say you have SimaPro, you have Word and or Excel on that machine, you install Report Maker as well. And the nifty feature about Report Maker, let's say you're doing, I don't know, an EPD report, a report that requires a lot of tables and graphs that are extracted from SimaPro. I'm sure you're fine if you want to, copy paste one table, two tables, three graphs. But let's say you make changes in your model in SimaPro, you would have to go back and like copy paste all these tables and graphs again in that report. So Report Maker, what it does is instead of copying the table, you kind of copy a link, a kind of a live link between Report Maker and between your document or your Excel book. And SimaPro. And once you update your model, whenever you do that in SimaPro, your report is also automatically updated. So maybe it's a nice time. We will encourage you to check it out. But that also brings us to the next part of the changes in the software. So back to you, Michiel.
Yeah. Well, I hope this is inspiring people to download Report Maker. I think, we can send an update to the people that participated in this webinar. Report Maker 3, the main important is compatibility with the more recent Office versions. We had installation problems with the recent Office versions. That's solved. You may have noted that the branding of SimaPro and Prey has changed last year, and we also adapted Report Maker for that to reflect that. If the 10% that is using Report Maker, they're using Report Maker 2. If it's working, there's no need to update. It's not compulsory; it's completely optional. And if you want to update, your results obviously will stay the same.
One question, Michiel, about Report Maker. So indeed, we have got a few questions about users saying, oh, I want to use it, but it was not compatible. So glad to let you know that it is now, should be compatible with Office 365. But another user, if you have a multi-user setup and does it only link to reports that are also on that server where the multi-user server is, or how does that work?
Okay, so that's a little bit detailed questions. First of all, Office 365. Office 365 exists in two versions actually. One, let's say the cheap version, the home version, which only works with documents stored in the cloud. And that's something SimaPro and Report Maker still do not support. You need a version that stores your document on your local computer. And that is a little bridge to the next answer. If you want to use Report Maker, you need to have SimaPro and Microsoft Office and Report Maker on the same computer. And if you use SimaPro multi-user, you probably have a SimaPro client on your local PC. And if you have Word and Excel, SimaPro Report Maker on that version, you can use it. You can even transfer update documents. Suppose I have a document in my personal folder, see users, Michiel, etc., and I send it to my my colleague Ruba. And her personal folder is see users Ruba. You can update the links to the, say it wrong. You can update the link to the database if Ruba is using the database on our local computer. So, and the multi-user, it should be working the same way.
Thank you, Michiel. There's one, I think we get one more question.
Yes.
So one user is kind of worried, like maybe they don't want to update the graph at a certain point. Does that happen automatically, or can you choose when to update? And do you want to update to all, or do you want to update just one of the tables?
Yeah, that's a good one. We never do stuff automatically, not in SimaPro and not in not in Report Maker if it can change the user's results. So in Report Maker, you have to actively press a button update, and then there's two options: either update all items in your document. So you have a Word document with 5 tables and 5 graphs. You can say update all, or you can update individually. Of course, if you update all, there's no revert back unless you make your own backup copy.
Okay, thank you, Pierre. That was all for now regarding Report Maker. I will also invite our users to check out the video about Report Maker on the Help Center. It explains all the details.
Yeah,
thank you.
We put a lot of effort in it to make it, and it's really a powerful tool in my opinion. I once spent a weekend on updating a very big report, so I know how valuable time can be for a consultant. Okay, let's continue to the main bug fixes and improvements. I said, it's a accumulation of fixes and improvements in this SimaPro 9.2 version. Some of the more interesting, not for all of you, but for some of you, there will be a silent installation possibility for all the SimaPro installers, which is mostly important for users of the SimaPro Classroom and faculty licenses because they work with a large group of students. We had a bug in the SimaPro database server, which accidentally closed the application when you minimized the database server. That's solved now. Another important issue is that we found that SimaPro, or actually the database system, or the combination of the two, is not really compatible with cloud storage. So we see that some people store the database on OneDrive or SharePoint or use Dropbox and that sort of, let's say, synchronization tools. SimaPro databases are simply too big and too slow is not the right word, but SimaPro cannot handle the fact that stuff is synchronized while it's being used by SimaPro. So we put in a small warning message not to try that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not really visible to the users, but there are some background services running from that sync services or something that can also create permissions errors or access denied errors or things like that pop up for the SimaPro user, and then it's hard for you to understand that could be the problem. But that's why we just advise against it.
No, that's true. I mean, it's compatible, but it can indeed cause errors. And the other thing is the export of files to our SimaPro platform. One of the issues there was that when you exported data, very often the data of all sorts of libraries were included. And using Ecoinvent, it could mean that like 10,000 processes or more were being exported, which of course takes a lot of time. It also takes a lot of time to import, and it's not needed. So we put in some more options to exclude the library data. At the same, we have this option also to exclude the database parameters. So we're hopefully, this has already improved the functionality of exchanging data to the platform. Let's see. Expanding on that, if I go to the next slide, there's a better library alignment between the platform and the desktop version. What we use in the platform what we use for streamlining these data is a platform ID, and this platform ID.
I think you skipped a slide with the main library changes.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, I thought it. So main library changes. Not surprisingly, Ecoinvent 3.7.1, and I think Amelia will explain why the 1 is so important. So I won't talk about this now. More data changes or updates, inclusion of new World Steel data. It's actually the 5th update of the World Steel data, but the data were released in 2019, but it took us some time. So 45 data sets are updated. for steel products at the factory gate, so it's cradle to grave. And we now include 3 regions, such as globally, Asia and Europe. And these will be included in the industry data 2.0 library. At the same time, we realized we had a lot of libraries in the database which were slowly becoming sort of outdated. To start with ELCD, this was already discontinued by the European Commission back in 2018, and we thought it's time to take it out. We had the Swiss input-output database. It was last updated in 2005, but I think the base year is even earlier. And the Agri Footprint 4 database. This was actually removed since the previous release of SimaPro 9.1 and has been updated with a new version, Agri Footprint 5. But because there were incompatibility issues, we could not do the normal library update as we do with Ecoinvent, for example. Let's see. Yeah, let's go to the library alignment then. Most exciting stuff. Yeah, so I already explained we use platform IDs to facilitate the data exchange between the desktop and the platform. On several levels, we use platform IDs for substances and we use platform IDs for library processes. And this will also help us to distinguish between the different, for example, Ecoinvent versions. So people can use Ecoinvent 3.5 or 6 or 7 and link to the correct version on the platform. So we have been working hard on streamlining all this. But it's important that you realize that these platform IDs need to be imported in your own database. So you really need to do full database updates for all these changes to take place. I mean, that means importing the right platform IDs. Currently, we have Ecoinvent available on the platform. We are working on Agri Footprint 5, US LCI, and industry data. So yeah, these will follow in the coming weeks, months. For that, we will continue to include the platform IDs in the different libraries that we will provide. And I think it's important because we see that more and more people are using SimaPro Flow or the SimaPro online platform in general. So yeah, people expect the same libraries to be available, and that is true for methods as well. We're working on that too. Let's talk about the impact assessment methods. We already had a lot of questions about Impact World Plus, and that will be included in the forthcoming update finally. I'm also happy that it's the method itself is really ready, because I remember a presentation at CTEC 2005 in The Hague where they proudly announced the new existence of this method. Well, Impact World Plus is a globally regionalized method for life cycle impact assessment, and it's a lot of difficult words, based on a midpoint damage framework with 4 distinct complementary viewpoints. Midpoint impacts, damages on human health, ecosystem quality, resources and ecosystem services, areas of protection, and damages on water and carbon, areas of concerns. And I'm not going to explain that now, period. There's a lot of documentation around, and I invite you to read it. There's also general description of the method in the method comment section, and there is also a general documentation of our implementation of the method in the methods manual. It's important that we now know that all the methods containing water flows, for example, AWARE, will also be updated to include regionalized water flows. We already had regionalized water flows on a country level, but with new geographies included in Ecoinvent 3.71, we now can include what we call subnational regions of Brazil, India, and the US. So essentially that's on a state or provincial level. And this will also mean that a lot of new substances will be added to the database. They will not be implemented in Ecoinvent 3.7 yet, I think, for some. We have to check that. But it's yeah, it's another step in making SimaPro more geared towards the regionalization. And we hope, yeah, we get questions about it. People like it. I think it's important because it's especially water footprinting is getting more and more used. And then I would say an update which is a bit weird. We included recipe 2016 some time ago. I think it was 2017. And then it came without weighting sets because the developers did not include any weighting with this method. At one point, we realized that the previous recipe, which was developed partially by us, included weighting and also normalization data. And a lot of people, users of SimaPro, are used to using a single score. And we got questions about, yeah, why is this weighting included and where does it come from? So to make the distinction clear that this weighting sets are actually included by Prey consultants, and I think they originate not even from the previous recipe, but even from Ecoindicator 99. We included a 0 weighting set, and that was on request of the method developers, so that it is clear that it's Prey's decision to include those weighting, and it's the method developer's decision to include no weighting. Are there any questions so far, Ruma?
There are some questions, but I think they will be addressed later about how to update and okay. If there are other data plans. Yeah, now you can go on. Yeah.
Get to that. Other data plans. Other data plans. One of the things is that we decided to no longer maintain a lot of existing methods in SimaPro, also because they were old or outdated or replaced. I mean, EDIP and Impact 2002 are replaced with Impact World Plus. LCD is replaced with EF, etc., etc. We also know that we have a lot of water footprint methods. Also, greenhouse gas protocol was already replaced in the previous version. We cannot remove methods from SimaPro. We can only move them to a category superseded. So if you look for any method in this list and you want to keep using it, you will find it in the superseded category after doing the full update of the methods library. Ruba, you mentioned the update procedure. It's no different from previous update procedures. As indicated, the software release date is the 1st of March. That is to compensate for the delays, and people with a valid service contract on the 1st of March can still import can import the update and update the software. The update and what we call full update instructions are available at the SimaPro Help Center at the install and update section. And perhaps I should tell a little bit about the difference between update and full update. An update is really from the previous version to the current version, and a full update is useful if you have missed one or more updates. You can do, pick and choose the ones you need.
So to give you a concrete example, let's say you're still using Ecoinvent 3.3, you will go to the full update because you've missed Ecoinvent 3.4, 3.5, 3.6, and so forth. Yep. If you have Ecoinvent 3.6 at this time, then all you have to do is just do the regular update and you can update to Econ 3.7, which is in SimaPro 90. The main difference in the distinction is just you kind of catch up on multiple releases. So the files are usually larger and the instructions are usually longer. So for people who continuously update, the irregular update is just usually a shorter, smoother process.
Yeah.
But
and
essentially, you will have the same result. Sorry.
Yeah. No, and you really don't want to update Ecoinvent 3.3 to 3.4 to 3.5 to etc. There are some well optional steps, but I mean, yeah, I really recommend you to do those steps. One is the replacement of obsolete Ecoinvent processes. Sometimes Ecoinvent stops supporting a process, and whenever there is a replacing process available, we have a replacement of course, and that will be a sort of semi-automated process. Does not mean that everything which is obsolete is removed or replaced. So there's still a possibility that you need to do a lot of manual choices, and I think Emilia will explain a little bit why. There's no need to update the database server, but yeah, if users already have SimaPro 9.0.0 or later, there may be a last-minute change to that, but I'll hear that next week. And of course,
this is again, the database server is of course just for the multi-user licenses, so it doesn't apply to all users.
Yeah, and then of course, if you use the platform, and we really recommend to update your database, but we'll, of course, give you separate instructions for that. And Ruba included a handy link to an article, what to expect after a SimaPro desktop update.
Yeah, we often get the question, what if I just update the software, or how do I know for sure my project is not going to be messed up, or is anything going to be deleted? So this article just kind of gives an outline of what you can expect on the software level, on the project level, what happens to your methods, if you have custom methods, all kinds of things. So it's also included in the update manual, but I just included it here as well, just in case.
Yeah. And there's one thing which has not changed in the update procedure, and that it's typically taking a very long time. And that's annoying. We're working on that. We know that a lot of people see that this message that SimaPro is not responding. If you see it, SimaPro is working really, really hard in the background and cannot update even this window. Our recommendation is leave it, grab a coffee, or go to lunch, go to dinner, go to bed. The next day it will hopefully be solved. Just be patient. That's a bridge to the outlook for the upcoming updates. We are actually working for some time now on a new version, SimaPro 10. And one of the things is improved performance, speed, not only of the calculation, but also of, hopefully the import and export processes. One of the things, the major achievements there is the updating of the programming language to the latest versions, which makes it much easier for us to support new software components, easier development of new features, and that sort of things. It also means that we are going to say goodbye to certain features which we feel are not really used that much in SimaPro, like the SimaPro wizards. Overall, the general look and feel will not really change that much. If I look at the outlook for the data libraries, we expect a new version of the Exile base developed by a consortium in cooperation with our Danish partner. Obviously, there will be Ecoinvent 3.8. We are also looking for updates for Plastics Europe, the US LCI, which is overdue, and other third-party libraries. And they could be more sector specific. Some of them may be free, some of them may not be free, but you'll be informed in due time when these are ready. On the method side, we also expect some updates. IPCC is to be updated, the newest release. We expect USTOX 212, and I'm sure there will be plenty of other smaller updates to other methods. And yeah, what I mentioned before, we want to align better with the SimaPro Online platform. So it's not only the data libraries, but also the alignment of existing methods available in the desktop. All the additional data libraries, like the current XIO-base or World Foods data library from Quantis, etc., they will also be available. And yeah, we're also working on the online version of the import and export in the LCD format. So there's yeah, a lot of work being worked on or still to be done.
Yeah.
But we look forward to that.
Yeah.
So I think it's question time now.
Thanks, Michiel. Yeah, we do have a bunch of questions about how to update to SimaPro 9.2 at the moment and where to find the files. So just to recap, it's almost finished. So it's not available online yet. Once we start deploying, you should get a personalized email, or you will find all the available information and the update manuals on the SimaPro Help Center. Yep. So we thank you for your patience, and it's coming soon. Actually, I think we can move on to Emilia at the moment and address questions later on. So, okay. Emilia, I'll make you presenter. Thank you, Michiel.
Welcome.
Thank you, Ruba. Yep, I see. Thank you. I think you can see my screen nicely.
Yes.
Yeah, so I will be, it's my pleasure to be here today in these joint webinars that we do now every year with SimaPro. I will present indeed the content of Ecoinvent version 3.7.1, but I will make first a very quick introduction to the Ecoinvent Association. We are a non-for-profit association founded in the late 90s by 5 Swiss research institutes and federal institutions. We are a team of 23 people now. Most of us are LCA experts, but also IT specialists, and then people taking care of sales and communications. You know us because we manage, publish, and sell the Ecoinvent database, and that's why we are here today. But we also do other things. We participate in projects, always with the aim and following this mission of improving data availability and data quality. And for that, we participate in projects which aim at collecting, hosting, and publishing lifecycle inventory data, or creating tools and hosting those tools to facilitate inventory data. And we also stay involved in initiatives such as PEF and GLAD to promote interoperability and promote access to data. And we also participate in projects that push the limits of that, such as orienting. Quickly, the Ecoinvent database, it's a global LCI database. It covers more than, I think now it's 19,000 data sets for about or more than 3,000 products. I think it's 3,300 products, covers more than 140 countries. And as Michiel has been saying, we release a new version every year. Our data providers, they come from industry associations, but also from research institutions and universities. They are also consultants, governmental agencies, etc. The data would go through a thorough internal review for compliancy and consistency with our established and published methodology, but it also goes through an external review by a competent editorial board, which is formed by editors which are experts in the different fields and the different sectors covered by the database. Around the database and around the database methodology, the Ecoinvent Association does user support, training, capacity building, and participating in webinars such as the one today. quickly, the database coverage, the database is covering all kinds of human activities. You can see a summary in the slide. It goes from crop production, electricity, or in general energy generation, resources extraction, metal forming, transport, etc. Today, later in the talk, I will be talking about the latest additions and updates we made to the database during 2019 and 2020, and that were published in 2020 in the Ecoinvent EcoQuery Ecoinvent platform, and are now being released to you through SimaPro. A bit quickly into the database structure and system models. Very quickly, a few slides to refresh memories on that. The Ecoinvent database is developed and maintained as multi-output and allocated and linked uniprocesses. You can think of that as a collection of inventories that try to model every activity in the closest way to the physical reality of the process they are representing. This is what we call the undefined database. It's only accessible through EcoQuery. As I said, this is the platform that gives access to the Ecoinvent database through the Ecoinvent website. You can access and consult that version of the database. You just need to have an identifier. You don't need a license for that. You can check this version if you're interested in the details behind the modeling of the activity, the choices that were done by the data provider. You want to check the balances. You want to see the full options behind the activity. This is a version that it's used to build 3 system models, which are the ones that you use for your work. In order to build those 3 system models, there are different algorithms that are applied on this undefined database. And these algorithms are then reflecting different modeling options. I will go a little bit into those modeling options in the next slides. The 3 system models that you are using, you're used to see those, are allocation cutoff by classification, allocation APOS, and substitution consequential long-term. Just refreshing what are the differences between the system models, what are the modeling choices that are being taken every time, or what are the questions that are being answered differently in those linking algorithms. The first question and the first difference between the system models relates to the way co-products or multi-production is handled, how the problem of co-production is solved. In the system models that use an attributional perspective, such as allocation cutoff by classification and allocation APOS, the byproducts are handled using allocation. So the burdens are shared between the different products. They are partitioned between the co-products, and this is solving multifunctionality. And for that, allocation factors are used. As a reminder, allocation is done following the ISO 14444 hierarchy. There's a disaggregation or a complex system, a subdivision of the system whenever possible. Otherwise, physical relationships are used where they're available, such as exergy in cogeneration activities, and otherwise, in general, economic considerations are used for allocation, typically the price. Where can you find the allocation factors? Not so easy for now. We're working on that to make that more accessible and easier to find. This is a screenshot of an allocated inventory accessed through the EcoQuery. You can see here underlined as true value. This is giving you the allocation key. In this example, this refers to tuna capture, and you can see the allocation key will give 96% to the tuna and 4% to the small pelagic fish. How is multifunctionality handled by the substitution consequential long-term system model? In that case, the approach used is called substitution. It means that the reference product for the activity will be burdened with the full impacts of all inputs and emissions of the activity, but will also have a credit that relates to the benefits of any byproducts that can substitute other primary production routes. We can use an example, fictional simplified example of a gold mine operation. In this gold mine operation, the silver, which is extracted as a byproduct, will be crediting the gold, which is the reference product of the activity. So silver will be bringing credits to the gold, and those credits will relate to the avoided impacts that relate to the extraction of silver in a dedicated silver mine. The second difference relates to the way burdens for waste treatment are considered. Are the burdens carried fully by the producer? Are they shared? There are two system models that give full responsibility to the producer of the waste. Those are allocation, cutoff by classification, and substitution consequential long-term. The exception or the nuance is the recyclable materials in allocation cutoff by classification, which are delivered burden-free. They can be used further downstream, they can have downstream uses, and they will be burden-free. In the case of APOS, the burdens associated to the treatment of the waste will be shared between all possible valuable products which are generated within the value chain. The value chain is looked as a system, as a small system, and then the burdens are allocated within those products. There's a small system expansion that allows to allocate together the product whose manufacturing generated the waste originally and any valuable product that it's produced while treating the waste. The third difference relates to the way consumption mixes are supplied. There's an approach in the allocation cutoff by classification and allocation APOS where all suppliers feed the consumption mix. And in the case of a substitution consequential long-term, only the suppliers that can adapt to changes in demand can supply the consumption mix. Those are the marginal or unconstrained suppliers. The consequence, as you can see here, is that the market composition will be different in the attributional or in the consequential approach. Very quickly, how can you discriminate between system models? First, we don't provide specific recommendations to you on when to use one system model or another. We think this is something that you would know better because you know the goals and the scope of your study. What we do is helping you understanding what are the consequences of using one or another system model. As I said, you can use between two system models that use a partitioning and one using substitution. If you are using a consequential approach, then don't mix that with attributional system models. If you prefer to continue working in the same line of reasoning as version 2 used to do, then you have to select the cutoff system model. This is the one that we would also advise for beginners. It's, in our opinion, the easier one to grasp.
Yeah, and I would just like to add, Emira, that you guys have great information and videos also explaining all the system models on your website. So I would also advise the audience to check it out.
Thank you, Ruba. Quickly, the cutoff system model separates primary and secondary use stages. This is an approach that will then incentivize the use of secondary materials. It will not per se incentivize waste producers to maximize reuse of waste materials. In APOS, on the other hand, waste producers are incentivized to assess recycling and reuse possibilities due to this partial allocation of impacts in the value chain. So APOS can therefore be used in studies where the question of waste disposal methods or recycling is a topic, in a sensitivity analysis together with cutoff, for example. The consequential system model shall be used, as I was saying, as a background database when you're performing consequential life cycle assessment. Consequential modeling is assessing changes, and this is the model is looking at the consequences of small scale and long-term decisions. So this is also something to consider. The use of substitution will have effects as we saw first in the results of productions which have significance by products, because first of credits, and also because the modeling of byproducts will create the demand of modeling primary productions in consequential. And second, because of consequential uses marginal suppliers, and that might mean that this is more or less impactful than the approach with average suppliers.
May I ask a question about this last remark about marginal suppliers?
Yes, of course.
I was wondering, I mean, supply chains change all the time, obviously, same with pricing and that sort of things. But I can imagine that when you first created this consequential database 8 years ago, yeah, you made certain choices for marginal suppliers, but now in 2021 things have changed. Do you update for that?
Yes, I mean, what we try to, I mean, as you know, marginal suppliers, they will be identified, well, first, because they are the ones that can provide a reference product, they can provide the market. And second, because of the level of technology, those are the ones that will be able to adapt to changes in demand. And this technology level was applied consistently in the creation of the whole system model, was then reviewed in the case of the energy sector some years later, and is something, as you say, that should be carefully reviewed every, I would say, 5 or so years, because that's the scale of the model. In any case, what it's also recommended, I'm happy you bring also the topic, when the user is using the consequential approach and things in the background become extremely important for the final results, this is the moment to bring that to the foreground and revise the assumptions that the background database is making and adjust them to the study.
Yeah, no, I think that's also true for how do you say, regional dependencies. Things in Europe may be different than in Asia or US.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
okay.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, let's go now to the data, which is normally the most interesting part. Version 3.7.1 was released in December 2020. As Michael was saying, the 1 is important. The version 3.7.1 was released to correct a critical issue identified in the version 3.7, which was released in September 2020. The issue relates to iron sinter production, and because we were correcting that, we decided to correct zinc mine operation as well, because we had at hand an update for that. So the 3.7.1 does not add new content compared to 3.7. It just corrects those two issues. In one case, it was an error. And that means that if one compares 3.7 and 3.7.1, this change is affecting only some categories, so human toxicity, and ecotoxicity, and mineral resources, but otherwise results in the other categories remain unchanged. So highlighting here, the content of 3.7.1 is the same as 3.7, but 3.7.1 is more correct because it corrects those two issues, and otherwise it's only those categories listed here that show the big changes between the two versions. We support the two versions, but we recommend, and we strongly recommend, the preferred use of 3.7.1. So the content, the version 3.7 and hence 3.7.1 released more than 900 new data sets and updated around 1,000, including the addition of new 100 products to the database. The update is expanding the coverage that the database makes of different sectors, such as metals, fertilizers, forestry and wood, packaging material, waste recycling, and biogas, and electricity market mixes. As always, there's a dedicated change report that will where you can see all the changes that were done between version 3.6, 3.7, and 3.7.1. You have a dedicated part analyzing the differences between 3.7 and 3.7.1, and in general, there's a lot of details on related to all changes between versions. It can be found here. I really invite you, of course, to access and to read it, at least to know where it is in case you need to consult it. Interestingly, this address that you can see here, it's also where you can find the correspondence file. That's a very important file. It's a mapping file between versions. That's where you can see how Ecoinvent suggests to map one activity from one version to the next. That's also the basis of the mapping that SimaPro will do when you're updating your versions. And in the case of obsolete activities, as Michael was saying, the case where an automatic change is not, an automatic mapping is not proposed, you can come to the correspondence file, understand why this is the case, and how you could substitute the obsolete activity by eventually several new technologies or new geographies. Okay, let's give some details here. I would like to start with the metal sector because, of course, the metal sector is it's affecting a large number of supply chains in the database, and I would like to start with cobalt. The updates that we made in cobalt were done with the collaboration of the Cobalt Institute, and they concerned the update of the cobalt production from extraction to refining. The production would include now 4 new cobalt-containing reference products, which are co-produced together with the cobalt metal in the supply chain. They are listed here: cobalt acetate, cobalt carbonate, cobalt hydroxide, and cobalt oxide. The Cobalt Institute has also provided data to model the specific electricity mix that it's used by the cobalt producers. And additionally, there's a lot of work that had been done in order to work the cobalt supply chain so it can interact better with other metals such as copper or nickel, through the introduction of, for example, more specific byproducts in cobalt production, also by adjusting production volumes of the different markets. So in the end, the supply chains interact better. I want to mention here an update that affects in general the metal sector. Prices for the metals have been reevaluated and adjusted. As a reminder, in this case, it will be the allocation key. The next metal I would like to mention now is then copper. This metal and the following ones I'm going to mention have been updated by EMPA, the Swiss Federal Laboratories for Material Science, and thanks to funding from BAFU, from the Swiss Federal Office for Environment. The main goal of the copper update was to provide regionalized data that could better represent the local production conditions, so they could better represent the conditions in the areas where mining or where smelting of copper was taking place. So this has led in the end to the addition of several new regions or to the refinement of other regions. So when we used to have, for example, for the mining, we used to have 2 regions, Australia and Chile. Now we have added new regions to that. Or in the smelting, we used to have large regions, and now we have countries. Another important aspect in the copper update is the separation of the smelting and the refining processes. Now, this is allowing the modeling of the 2 copper production routes, pyro and hydrometallurgical. So that's interesting for that. And in general, again, as I was mentioning with cobalt, there has been an overall restructuring of the supply chain, in this case involving a lot of renaming of flows, renaming and activities in the copper supply chain. So it's now connectivity is improved, but also nomenclature and modeling goes closer to industry standards. For 371, new data for mining and beneficiation on one hand side, and smelting and refining on the other hand side for nickel concentrate have been introduced, covering the geography of China and global. That means that there are now in the database 2 extraction routes modeling different concentrations of nickel in the concentrate right now in the database. There has been also renamings again to get closer to the naming conventions used by the nickel industry, and the nickel market, production volumes of contributing activities, etc., have been updated to better reflect the reality of suppliers of the metal, and again to better connect cobalt and copper. That's a work, of course, that involved all those metals. Following with the update done by EMPA, there are related to scarce metals. First, I would like to highlight the updates made for rare earth production in China. There are new data sets that have been added, and also price and production volumes have been updated. In the version 3.6, there were Chinese and global data sets available. They would represent rare earth oxide production from bastnasite ore, and now in version 3.7 we include distinct regions and distinct ore extraction. So we can find now from bastnasite and monzonite ores, and also ion adsorption clays. There had been other scarce metals, such as, for example, beryllium hydroxide production activities that have been introduced, reflecting mining and processing of the bertrandite ore in the US, and new activities introduced for tungsten, including datasets for tungsten mine operation and beneficiation, datasets for intermediate products, and for tungsten carbide powder. There are now different production routes also depending on the regions where the activity takes place. To close the metal sector with iron, like the big two, iron and steel and aluminium. So the iron supply chains have been updated in our collaboration with TU Graz, ETH Zurich, and also internal work. We have updated the global data sets, also the European data sets for iron and steel production from mining to steel making. The European supply chain of steel is now modeled in more detail. New European activities, both at the European but also at the country level, have been added to the database, and it has increased a bit granularity. On top of the updating of those production activities of iron and steel, there is the disposal and recovery of iron and steel industry byproducts that have also gained in granularity. This I was saying before. New byproducts and its corresponding treatment chains, so recovery or landfilling, have been added to the database.
One question, Emilia. The recycling processes of metals, were there any changes there?
Well, there are 2 production routes for steel, and one is a recycling. It's using scrap, iron scrap. So this stays the same. It gains granularity, but there's no new technology added there. And in the case of aluminum, which is the one I'm going to mention next, recycling was also well covered.
Yeah, and for the other metals like copper or zinc or perhaps two scarce metals?
No, it's primary production that has been updated. Yeah.
Okay,
Copper
thanks.
also had recycling modeled in the database. This has also stayed, but there has not been secondary production added to those metals. The update since primary.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome. So still, sorry, aluminum. In the version 3.7.1, there had been an update related to the aluminum supply chains in Canada. So this is covering from the electricity mixes to the anode and the primary production, liquid and ingot in the region Canada. The data is provided by the Aluminium Association of Canada that commissioned then the CIRIC to integrate the data in the Ecoinvent database. And this data is substituting the existing data for region North America. So the remaining countries in North America are now included in the rest of the world geography. So let's move from metals to the fertilizer sector, which is the second one I want to bring up today. The changes in this sector can also have a very large reach, because you can see effects of that in the crop production, of course. They consume fertilizers, but also in the chemical sector, because some of those are precursors or are used for further manufacturing of chemical substances. So the update in the fertilizer sector added new data, also updates data related to mineral fertilizers and precursor production. This is data from Ayara International and also Fertilizers Europe with the support of Quantis and the World Food Database. This update of the fertilizer sector also restructures and updates the value chains and market mixes. So in short, there is now a clear separation between the supply of a chemical product and its use as a nutrient in crop production activities. There's a separation of organic and mineral fertilizers, and there is the possibility of using regional specific mixes for mineral fertilizers. So you can see here in the slide the data sets, the products that we have updated or added new to the database. So the manufacturing of all the listed substances in the slide are now available in the database. There are regional, this is regional data when that was available. So there's a regional coverage. So some of the substances you can see here are precursors for fertilizers manufacturing, typically nitric acid or even ammonia. Some are used elsewhere than in fertilizer manufacturing, somewhere in the chemical industry, for example, urea, so has the possibility or the potential to impact results at other levels in the database. Typically, urea relates to gluing agents and then affects the results there. And others are fertilizers that are used just as such directly in the crop production. Yeah.
If I may ask, so since it's related to chemicals, there is also a question about if there's any update to methanol. So specifically, they're asking about ammonia and methanol based on coal in China. That was if there is an update on some of the chemicals, specifically ammonia and methanol, based on coal in China that was deployed at a massive scale in the last decade. Current database does not really cover these new coal-based commodity chemicals. Sorry, I just read it out.
Yeah, ammonia is updated, not methanol. You can see here ammonia now is produced using two different routes. So there's ammonia production using steam reforming, and there's ammonia production using partial oxidation, which was not the case before. And yeah, I think it partly covers what the user is asking now. We can stay here in this slide because I would like to use it to illustrate the aspects or the remodeling that has been done to the fertilizers value chain. There's a big part of this remodeling of the fertilizer value chains that relates to this separation between the manufacturing of a chemical product and then its later use as a fertilizer, as a nutrient supply. Until now, in the database, the chemicals that were used as fertilizers were, since they were manufactured, named as fertilizers, so they will have as N or as phosphate, and then they will be treated or modeled as such. We are now making the chemical substance independent from its potential use as fertilizer, as nutrient supply. So the chemical substance is now, the modeling of that is harmonized with naming conventions and modeling conventions of the chemical sector. So there's no more urea as N, for example, or nitrogen fertilizer as N as the outcome of a chemical process. And this is also then adding a few layers in the supply chain. So what we are trying to do with that is to facilitate also the way that the fertilizers can be connected into the supply chain of the users. So we can use maybe the ammonia example here because it's also in front of our eyes. So ammonia is produced here, as I was saying, using two different technologies, and then it will supply a market. And as from the market, it can be used in downstream chemical processes, as typically the manufacturing of urea, or it can be used directly as a nutrient for nutrient supply for crops. What we are modeling now is an addition here. It's a connection between the chemical, so ammonia in the example, to a generic market for inorganic nitrogen fertilizer. This is done using this connecting activity. The same is done to all chemicals that have a use as fertilizer, in this example as nitrogen fertilizers, of course. This is creating, in the end, this generic market that is reflecting at the level of the consumption mix for nitrogen. It's reflecting the mix of substances that can be used for the final user who doesn't have an idea of what a specific substance is will be used for his or her crop. Those markets are regionalized. They reflect the reality of different countries. They have been done using data from Fertilizers Europe. So as an advanced user, you have the possibility of linking to that generic market, or you have the possibility of modeling the input of fertilizer from the original chemical substance, or from the intermediate linking activity if you want to get it not from the market. And as I have mentioned before, you can see here there's a separation between inorganic and organic, which is also a key factor in this remodeling of supply chains. And let's look a bit at the consequences. This is the market composition for nitrogen fertilizer in 3.6. And there was only one market. It was combining organic and mineral, 70% being mineral and the rest being organic or organominerals. And this generic market was not agglutinating all the chemicals that could potentially be used as nutrients in the crop production. It was giving a very biased perspective. If we move to version 3.7, and we look now at some of the consumption mixes of inorganic nitrogen fertilizer as N. Here I'm going to show 2 slides. Those are European countries. The next one is a bit more international. So if we can see here how country mixes differ in the use of fertilizers already at the European level, and how this is then captured by those markets. If we compare with 3.6, this is in light green, we are representing all organic fertilizers that are excluded from the mineral mix now. And of course, the similar effect can be seen if we look a bit more outside of Europe and to the world. I'm representing here other mixes, other countries, and also rest of the world. It's this small one here. And you can see how different the mixes are. And those differences, this is the mix in the market, but those differences are reflected, of course, will reflect in different scores as well. Here you can see the three generic nutrients, nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium. I have been using nitrogen as an example, but the same work has happened to the three nutrients. And you can see that the generic markets are representing each of them with a proper regional mix for each fertilizer, and how diverse the scores can be. And you can compare that with 3.6, which has a unique global market in each of the cases. Okay, and let's move to the wood sector now, where we have updated the wood value chains from forest row to processing of wood that include forestry machinery, sawing and drying activities, planning, wood-based products, and wood preservation. There had been a whole work also in adding new regional markets, evaluating and correcting transport distances, and modeling imports at the European level to better describe and draw the value chains. Some engineered wood have been updated, such as fiberboard, glue laminated timber, medium density fiberboard, oriented stranded board, particle board, and plywood, removing in some cases the distinction between indoor and outdoor, or adding new glue producing activities. So glulam can now differentiate between some glues. And we also have added some new engineered wood products, such as cross-laminated timber, structural timber, 3 and 5 layer board, and tubular particle board. The energy electricity market mixes in the attributional system models have been updated to represent the situation in 2017 for most countries. In the case of US and Canada, the reference year is 2018, and the US and ERC regions have been renamed and adjusted accordingly. In the paper and pulp sector, the updates and additions have been done around packaging materials. So activities for solid bleach and unbleached board and folding box board and chipboard have been replaced by new activities. And in the case of kraft paper, there has been an update of the production of kraft paper and an addition of new data sets modeling paper sacks, which is representing a hybrid mix of all multi-wall paper sacks in Europe. As you can see here, this is a collaboration with several associations and the consultancy RIS, which is making the bridge. There are more additions in the recycling activities. So you were asking me for, Michael. This complements also nicely what you were mentioning. There are new data relating to packaging materials for Europe and Switzerland, covering collection, sorting, and recycling processes of beverage cans and paperboard. And related to biogas production and utilization, there have been an update or additions for Switzerland only. This is very Swiss specific. The biogas sector spreads now into 4 levels. So from biogas production all the way to biomethane upgrading to vehicle grade. And there are both studies were done in collaboration with ETH Zurich and Carbotech. To finalize with a very Swiss-centric also update, we updated the glass wool mat productions from Isover, Saint-Gobain in Switzerland. Modeling now, the user has a capacity of choosing between two alternative adhesives, plant binder and phenolic binder. And I would like to close with our customary outlook on version 3.8, features and content, like a sneak peek. I started with the user comfort features because that is where the goal, the main goal of the version 3.8 is to improve what we call comfort features. So the comfortable use of and the usability of the database by the users. So you will have improvements at the level of the PDF report, at the level of the product information. So how can you choose between one product or another when you're doing your modeling, improving elementary flow definition, markets definition. You will have an easier search, biogenic carbon allocation corrections will be ready for you. But we don't forget about the content, of course. You will have in the version 3.8 a whole electronics sector overhaul with new appliances and updated components. Scarce metals, you will have new scarce metals and updated scarce metals. Energy infrastructure will be updated, especially batteries. And there will be, of course, an update of the electricity mixes. Agriculture and forestry and building and construction sector will be updated because of the introduction of bamboo. We introduced the whole supply chain from forestry to finalized products in bamboo in the relevant regions for that. And we will release an add-on which will allow users to make studies compliance with EN 15804. We will also release a calculation help for users interested in implementing the GHG protocol. It will help calculating scopes 2 and 3 for electricity chains. And last but not least, we will release a new website with one of the features. There will be dedicated sectorial web pages that you can consult and find all the information from the different sectors. And with that, I'm done.
Thank you, Emilia. We have so many questions. So I'll try to pick out a few and let's see how many we can answer in the 8 minutes we have left. So one of the more recent ones is, can you give an example of a biogenic carbon allocation correction?
Yes, I can. So what we have done in the version 3.7.1, I was running a bit in this part, so I couldn't give so many details. We have done a whole work in reevaluating the carbon balances, biogenic carbon balances in dedicated sectors, typically wood, the sector forestry, and then wood processing, and also paper and pulp and paper sector. We have worked on ensuring the balances there, and what we have done after that is to make sure that once allocation happens, an allocation will use the price consideration, the carbon balances are restored in the data sets. So that will be done in a way that the user will be able to identify the correction in carbon consumption due to this rebalancing of the carbon in the data set to compensate for the distortion at the introduced by economic allocation. And yes, that's how it would work.
Thank you. And we have another question. So let's say for India, if we're looking for a specific data set and there's nothing specific for India, which data set would be more appropriate to use, the global or, for example, the RER?
Yeah, I would say it depends. That's a favorite answer for all LCA practitioners. But so of course it depends what are you specifically searching for. If you have in the database a region which is close and can represent your the technical disposition and reality in the Indian context, then why not using that? Otherwise, by default, yeah, rest of the world is representing anything that it's not specifically modeled as a region in the database.
Okay, thank you. And now I have a bunch of questions about whether certain data is available. So I don't know, yes or no, or it's coming would be a good answer. For example, data on zinc electroplating. Too specific. We can we can check it afterwards.
Maybe.
Yeah. What about maybe carbon fiber, new data, and composite materials in general?
Yeah, composite materials in general is something that it's in the pipeline. It is not coming for 3.8 as you saw, but it's definitely coming and in the pipeline. Yeah.
Okay, and information about talk?
About?
Talk.
Talk. Yes. Now I'm blank with this one.
Okay, so this we can also get back to it. And in general, are there more efforts to add more current electricity mixes to the database? For example, recent standards are requiring the use of residual electricity mixes to avoid double counting.
Yes,
renewable
definitely.
energy grids.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, definitely. This is definitely in the pipeline, hopefully for 3.9. Otherwise, it will be 3.10. But this is already a work that it's in the conception phase, and it's something we're really eager to implement, to give the possibility probably of choosing between physical mixes or residual mixes depending on the region of interest. Yes.
Okay. And in terms of geography, if there's more data coming available for Brazil?
Yes, there is. There is a whole effort. There's a nice collaboration and synergy that the Ecoinvent has with Rede ATV and the Brazilian partners and stakeholders. We will be surely publishing the first results of that in 3.8, and more will come in future versions. So there will be better coverage for Brazil in 3.8 for sure.
Okay. And just a few more. Let's see. This one. Michiel, I'm not sure if you know this, but regarding the world steel data that you mentioned earlier, we mentioned update Asia and Europe. Is there anything specific also for Africa?
I don't think so. Otherwise, it would have been mentioned. So yeah, I hope for a future update.
Okay. All right. And another question, maybe if you can offer some advice for waste plastic modeling. Let's say there's a lot of data for polyethylene, but for the others it's limited at the moment. Is there any proxy that you would recommend in such cases that could possibly?
It's really tough because it's dependent on so many issues. If people have questions about it, they best either contact us or they can also ask our SUA discussion list to create a more generic discussion. What I know is that we are looking into updating our waste scenarios, which have the average recycling rates for typical packaging materials like plastics, but it does not really have all the let's say right recycling processes and that sort of thing. So that's the reason for one of the questions to Amelia from earlier.
Okay. And Emilia, for the update on paper, pulp, and forestry, was there a new data for South Africa, or does it include South Africa?
No, no.
Okay.
The coverage is very much European for that.
Okay. And a few more questions. In general, what's the Ecoinvent process for accepting data from researchers? Maybe you can give a bit of information about that, Emilia?
Yeah, I can. So the first thing is contacting the Ecoinvent Association. That's we start a dialogue. We understand then what is the goal, or what you would like to deliver to the Ecoinvent database, in which conditions. Then we have a whole process that we will explain in detail, because there's the data modeling and the data submission and the data review. There are a distribution of roles there between the data provider and the Ecoinvent Association and the external reviewers. There's different ways we can also collaborate. We can also take a part of the data submission on behalf of a data creator, but there's not I would say a standardized solution. We have a process with a lot of elements that then together with the data provider we assemble, and then we start a data submission process. And yeah, so we are happy to get emails and contacts related to that.
Great. Well, we have a lot of specific questions. I think it's best if we I'll gather them all, and I'll send them to the relevant parties, whether from SimaPro or Ecoinvent, and then we can send the participants the list of the answers, just taking the time. But maybe to close, already expectations, like when do you think 3.8 will be out?
It's September. It's our I would say our month. So yeah, late September, always when we can still call it summer. So that's late summer for us, the late September, around after the 15th of September.
Great. Yeah, and usually, Michiel, I would say it's safe to say it takes us a couple of months, if things go well, to have it available for SimaPro users. And like Michiel mentioned, there's a lot also going, a lot of work going for SimaPro 10 on the performance and on the infrastructure of SimaPro, making it a bit more future-proof. So hopefully we have a lot more to offer you later this year. And with that, I would like to wrap up and thank foremost our speakers, Emilia, Michiel. Thank you so much for this informative session. I want to thank also the audience for all the questions and for your engagement for all 90 minutes. That's really appreciated. And like I mentioned, I will follow up on the questions. And I think it's nice if we send a general overview of all the questions and the answers, so that we can all learn from each other. So I'll do that the coming week. So thank you all for attending, and hope to see you virtually again in the future.
Yeah. No. Yes. Well, I also want to extend my thanks to all the attendees that listened all the time, or not, perhaps. And again, thanks for the Ecoinvent team. I think, I mean, we've been working together for so many years, and I cannot say how impressed I am with all the work you managed to do and how to keep us updated. And so, how do you say, detailed and documented and transparent and that sort of thing. So you're really a great example for the LCA community. So thank you, Emilia, and of course that extends to all your teams and partners.
Thank you, Michael. That's really nice. I will extend it to the team, of course.
Yeah,
thank
welcome.
You. Thank you both also for the organization, and thank you everyone for listening.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Have a nice day.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.